Welcome, guys, to another show of Eman Talks. This is How Subscribed Are You? And I have yet again this week a very special guest, Lloyd, Mathias. Lloyd, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking out the time.
Thanks, Aman. Great to be on the show.
Great. So, guys, a lot of people already on LinkedIn. If you're in the industry, you would know Lloyd, right? Right now, he's an angel investor. He's a business marketing strategist, and he has a long career. Working with HP, working with Motorola, PepsiCo. I can go on and on. But the question I want to ask you, Lloyd, is there one thing which people usually don't know about you, apart from your friends and family, maybe?
Yeah. Basically, I've been a marketer for a good part. But I think one thing that I really enjoy quite a bit is exploring. So not just traveling, but I like to go to places, little hidden gems and treasures. So I do spend, some spare time exploring new places, exploring new things, learning new things. So I would say exploring a very broad term. Largely, it would be bucketed under traveling, but I also like to try new things. So, I promised myself a few years ago that every year I do two things I'd never done before in life.
Uh-huh.
And that's a nice way. You suddenly, like a good salesperson, November, December, the pressure's on. 10 months gone, I haven't done something new. And then I force myself to do something really foolish. But, but that's where a lot of the learning starts. So I would say deep down, I'm a big explorer. So you can say a corporate slave, but with an explorer hidden.
I think I can completely relate with you because whenever I'm like going through the year, the tough times, I'm always thinking about my trip, that one trip which I will get in summers or end of the year. Brilliant. So, Lloyd, next
Just if
question.
I may, just sorry, if I may just elaborate. Very funny. I did this, vow to myself about 7 years back, new theme. And I remember 3 years back, it was like end of December, early December, and I hadn't done my two new things for the year. And I remember a friend called me and said there was some economics oriented show in ABP News, which is the Star News.
Yeah.
And they were looking at a panelist, and I said, look, good, I'm born and brought up in Bombay, very bad Hindi speaker. So there I was on a 1 hour show on Star News talking about the economy in Hindi. And I'm very embarrassed about it, but you do foolish things, as I said.
But you did something. I think that's interesting. And these are the things which you remember, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So I think, Lloyd, getting into the main section of the show,
Mhm.
please tell us how subscribed are you? What are some of the subscriptions you have in your life?
I think I'm fairly subscribed, but not as much as I'd like to be. I still grew up in an old world where, in a sense, you made a lot of transactions as one-off transactions. And therefore, a lot of my subscription history came out of magazines and things that I got regularly growing up, right? We all grew up in middle-class Indian homes, the Reader's Digest. But if I look at the last 5 years as a block, I think there are some of these old habits die hard. I still subscribe regularly to every issue of The Economist. I like the India Today. And these are two publications I, somehow devote some time reading physical copies, right? My wife is a big Kindle fan, but I still like the physical copies, these two things. And then, of course, like everyone, I'm fairly okay with some of the OTT subscriptions. I'm a big Spotify user. I like my Netflix and Hotstar. Though I'm not a binge watcher, I'm still a news junkie and a sports junkie, which is more traditional viewing. But I do like to watch. But if I were to look at a subscription that I really look forward to, I think it's my weekly issue of The Economist. It gives me a good understanding of the world around, and I feel pretty comfortable. It kind of helps me keep abreast, helps me know things at a depth that I'm required to and a depth that I'm comfortable with.
Nice. And if I were to ask you which one is your favorite, would it be still Economist or there's something else?
I would say The Economist, certainly. I think it's a nice magazine. It's kind of comprehensive. It has a fairly, it is a free market view to the world, which I subscribe with. Though I sometimes, falter their view about traditional economies, India being one. I still think it's a very Western world outside in view of India. So I've had my share of, I would say, disagreements, if I may call it that. They're too large an institution. But I still believe in their integrity and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I still believe that a lot of what they offer, the articles are very fact-filled and very wholesome.
Mm-hmm. Great. And I think that moves, I'll move to my favorite question and also the last question. Now we get a little bit of idea that, what kind of person you are. You love your news, you love your sports. We have seen the side of you where you've told yourself that you're going to do two new things in your life. Now, all of your likes, all of your interests, your hobbies or efficiencies, which can be brought to your professional life. If there was one subscription, which does not exist right now, let's say in India, but you had this wish come true that in 2021, this subscription will be, granted to you and it will make some meaningful impact in your life. what would that be?
Great. I'm going to take the liberty and ask you for two, but let me give you my first wish list. The first would really be, I've been relatively new for the last 2.5 years as an angel investor, and I'm working closely with the venture capital space. And there are certain subjects that I'm focused on, both for my investments and for the companies that I work closely with. Uh, and therefore, a lot of those are technology oriented. But today, technology is a very wide span of terms. So within that, I'm looking closely at, you can say the clean energy space, which also includes electric vehicles. And another area, I would say, is a lot of it is on the analytics space, which is using, let's say, machine learning and such like to solve everyday issues in a very clear manner. I am not able to get a good handle on either of these things through a very easily subscribable model. Right now, I look at a very wide spectrum of things and follow various Twitter handles and subscribe to a lot of podcasts that kind of give me a reasonable understanding. But I would love for a kind of more comprehensive, wholesome Reader's Digest kind of version that gives me a short encapsulation of the three things. Mm-hmm. And I'll just, if you give me a little more time to amplify what I mean by this, it's like, I do follow a set of podcasts that I love, right? So something like Play to Potential, I love Amit Verma's podcast. Now they give me a lot of information on things I don't know enough about, because I'm very, very conscious, and all of us spend a lot of time on social media, is to not to kind of explore, to go beyond my echo chamber, right? Mm-hmm. We all recognize that over time, algorithms are built to feed us more of the same stuff we like. And our lives as we get older are full of people like us. Therefore, a lot of whom I follow on social media or the podcasts are views that are often contrarian. People who see the world very differently, most often with areas I don't agree. So I'd really like, back to the question of a wish list, I'd like for a subscription model, maybe in a podcast form, that gives me, let's say, a weekly update on some of the key areas in technology specific to the future, which are the areas which are investment worthy, where there's a lot of new things happening, where possibly, India has a lot to learn from, and therefore that will help me in my core area. So I think that is the one that I'm most excited about. The second is more traditional. I miss the old world when, you could typically read 3 or 4 books a month, right? I confess to being, high on ADD. We are so caught up with 480 characters of Twitter and such like. I'm not able to give that deep focus of those 2 hours a day reading and such like. I would like for someone to do a very modern version of the old book summaries, mm-hmm. right? So give me a kind of concentrated version, something that's like about, say, 6,000 words, mm-hmm. that gives the essence of a book or a subject that I'm keen to learn. So that at the end of it, I'll know enough about that through those 6,000 words. And hopefully, 1 out of 5, 4 times, I'll jump in and buy the book and then go deeper into it. Mm-hmm. I think these 2 things will kind of complement, my experience on this whole place very well.
No, I think these are great ideas. And if audiences, if you're listening, if any budding entrepreneurs who are looking at subscription models, I think this is a great idea, because I completely relate with you, Lloyd, because there's so much of information, and especially somebody like you who needs information as an angel investor, that what's happening, what are the new updates in a particular domain. You would be more than happy to pay for a subscription which is helping you save your time and giving you that information, right? So there's a white space right there, right? Anybody who can make a business model out of you, I mean, you would be the first person who buys it. And the second one is also very interesting, right? Because I see a lot of apps around the world who are trying to do this, right? The whole summary thing. I've not used it, but a lot of, maybe I can send you a list of these apps which actually give you summaries, but I don't know where they are going, or what kind of problems are happening in the consumer experience space, because none of them is, I think, doing really, really well.
Just state one more point, since your show is largely about subscriptions, is saying that also in a manner, the last 5 years, the last decade, mm-hmm. is more very true about the subscription economy, mm-hmm. right? A lot of us, let's say we grew up in the 80s and 90s, a lot of our endpoint was always ownership, right? How do I own the house? How do I own my furniture? How do I own my book collection? How do I own my music with CDs or whatever? And what is refreshing is world, and I've kind of seen it outside in largely, is there's a whole new generation that is focused on enjoying it for the moment, right? So you rent a house, you lease the furniture, you stream the music, right? So there's no ownership, but they're getting as much of the joy of existing. In fact, just one experience in one of the firms I'm with, they deputed me as a board advisor to a company that was into furniture rentals. And
Mm-hmm.
I found that whole business model kind of very alien to me until I actually dived deeper and figured that a lot of young people living in our metros like Bombay and Bangalore would rather, when they move homes, when they move jobs, they rather move home to a home that's closer to their workplace, and then do not want to get on legacy furniture. They're more happy leasing out furniture, right, as they lease cars. And I think that is refreshingly new and indicative of a new India. People who are far more confident about their earning capacities and their future than maybe the kids who grew up in the 80s who were so conscious of owning and, kind of got stuck with 20, 25-year EMIs. And I think, therefore, the subscription economy time is real. It also forces businesses to prove themselves at every subscription, right? You no longer can take your loyalty for granted, right? In the old times, you said, build loyalty and then you can milk the consumer for a lifetime. Here, I think subscription is that way the new avatar of FMCG, right? So at every renewal, you've got to prove your self-worth. And therefore, it makes brands, it makes offerings far more contemporary and far more real. And I think that is a very, very positive sign.
Oh, absolutely. And since you're making that point, right? Let me ask you a question because you have experience in all these organizations, including FMCG. Now, the person you were describing is exactly like me. I have some 20 subscriptions in my life, including the furniture rental, even my all the devices I have in my kitchen, like a fridge. It is on subscription. My coffee, my groceries, even my water purifier is on subscription, right? I only pay for the water, right? I don't want to own that big device. But in last 3 4 years I've been having this conversation with a lot of CEOs. But what I understand is it's not that that CXO or that company does not understand that people are moving from the whole concept of ownership to outcome, right? But there's always a hesitation, right? Because I can understand that moving that entire mindset of a company, because in a way it is also like a transformation. But you have been in those shoes. Could you please tell us that what are these 2 3 challenges that CXOs are facing, or what are the 2 3 things which in a way which we can ease out their transformation if somebody is helping them to do that?
Sure. I think the challenge largely is the mindset, right? And I keep saying is that kids grown up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, civilization, slightly insecure environment, right? If you don't own the refrigerator in your own home, what happens one day, right? So the fear of lack of ownership. I think the moment one gets comfortable in terms and you understand a new refreshed thinking like younger people who say, why do I get saddled with a car of whom I'm going to pay EMIs for 3 to 5 years, but 2 years later I might just find this car not good enough for me anymore, right? And all the efforts of getting it for its quarterly servicing and taking care of all the other issues, I've got too much in my life happening already, right? So it's a sense of a sign of a much lower level of insecurity. And it's the freedom of choice. So in that sense, it's truly democratic. So I think that's one part that older business leaders ought to get used to, saying that a lot of new age thinking is really about the value, to prove yourself, not in terms of so-called conning the customer once, that once you sell it to him, then it's up to him. So it's liberating, and I think that's the first part. The second part is the ability to make every transaction, and therefore to focus is on customer experience. Because now what the consumer is buying is your experience at every moment, right? And the moment he tires of it, he's willing to, right? So in the sense, life is beta, right? So it's like a product. It had to be perfect, right? You research it to death, you check it out, you do a trial run, you do a test market, and then you put it out. I think the new world is about saying, hey, let it go out there. And then people are going to feedback. And then OTT, you will refine your product. And people are going to give you more feedback. And then OTT, you'll get it better, right? We've seen Gmail evolve. And we've seen a whole lot of products which are mega products, which pretty much started in the beta phase. So I think the other part is to get used to the fact that life is beta, right? We never want to be that perfect version of ourselves. Every day in the morning, we go out and we set forth things. And hopefully we come back as a better person. So I think it's really the acceptance, the fact that as humans, we're constantly evolving. Our products are evolving, our offerings are evolving. And as business leaders, if we don't recognize that, we'll always try to play catch up, right? So, I mean, take me for what I am, faults and all, and I'm only going to get better. I think once you recognize that, there's no fear in failure, there's no fear in improving yourself, there's no fear in changing your mind. I think it becomes positive. And I believe that a lot of older business leaders have to come to terms with this. It's a mindset change. You can't go out with the belief that I'm going to create this one perfect product that is going to work for eternity, right? That world doesn't exist, right? Every morning you got to prove yourself, make it better. And I think it's a great sign of good times.
No, amazing. I just wish all the people I talk to on the other side, at the client side, were just like you, because they are not like you. I mean, the way you were explaining, I think once you start accepting that things are changing and you change your mindset, I think the companies, the bigger corporations, especially the traditional ones, they'll also embrace models like D2C and subscription models with wider arms. But Lloyd, thank you so much. I think it was amazing talking to you. Thank you for taking out the time, and I really enjoyed chatting with you.
My pleasure, Aman. Thank you so much. Enjoyed being on your show and keep doing the good work.